Welcome everybody to today's Insider Series. We are now live streaming on LinkedIn as well. Today we have a very exciting agenda today. We have Jake Day, one of our managing partners, who has got quite a bit to tell us about in terms of process consulting. Jake is a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. Wow, that sounds scary, like a ninja for Six Sigma. So he's going to talk to us about some of his expertise. Jake has been working in process reengineering since 2008. He started his career at Walmart. He's got a deep amount of experience in supply and logistics. And Jake, I think you want to talk to us about process consulting today. I'm going to give you our virtual stage, and I'm going to turn my camera off, and please share your slides and walk us through your presentation today.
All right, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about business process model maturity and how you can apply a new framework that we've created to your business and hopefully use it to jumpstart your organization's hyper innovation journey. Now, to do this, I want to start by defining some key terms related to our discussion today. So business process management is the end-to-end management and improvement of an organization's business processes. This can help you gain clarity on your strategic direction by helping you understand the true capabilities of your current processes and how the resources are aligned to each of your business processes. And it also helps you become more disciplined and efficient in your daily operations. Now, business process maturity, this is going to be used to indicate the level of readiness and how capable and conducive your processes are to being managed and innovated. Innovation usually requires some common prerequisites like documented process maps and data. This greatly increases the likelihood that your process innovation journey will be successful. So business process maturity, it gives us an indication, right, of how much our processes have met that innovation prerequisite. So the goal of business process maturity is to enable every process to be ready and capable of being innovated through a continuous improvement cycle, which can produce both incremental and then also breakthrough improvements. This is absolutely critical if an organization wants to survive and thrive in today's business world. Now, there are a lot of business process maturity models out there, and most of them are going to operate on a 5-level system, but sometimes the definitions of each level can get convoluted and confusing. My goal is to simplify the innovation process. So I've taken some liberty to adapt one of the best models for business process maturity, which can be found at bpmhandbook.com, and present it in a way that we can build a simple and an actionable approach to rapidly mature business processes. So let's take a look at these levels. Level 1 organizations don't really have defined processes at all. Processes, even the recurring ones, are handled more like project tasks. They're often not scheduled, but rather they're ad hoc. And as you can imagine, they are often chaotic. About 23% of organizations, their processes operate this way. And so you might be asking yourself, why or how does this happen? How can you have a process that is not even a process? It's more of a project. Well, a level 1 process, they usually originate from the startup phase of an organization, where they are new processes that an organization is trying to figure out. I would say that most processes start at this level until we can figure out the best way to do them on an ongoing basis. But the key is to standardize the process once we figure out the best way to do it. And that's really what level 2 is all about, the business process maturity model. It's about repeatable and standardized process that is understood by the operator. Now, the key differentiator between a level 2 and a level 3 process is that level 2 processes, though they're understood, are not documented. Now, there are organizations out there that seem to make it just fine by operating at level 2 processes that aren't documented, that's stuck in their head. But as you can imagine, that comes with a certain level of risk, like what happens when a person who has all the knowledge of the process in their head decides to leave the organization. Also, what happens if auditors come in and want to see process documentation to resolve an issue? Also, level 2 processes make innovation hard because we can't actually see the process flow. But once a process is documented, it's now at a level 3 of maturity, and the organization begins to move from kind of a reactive state to a proactive state. You now have a document that you can use for business continuity when that person with all that process knowledge does decide to leave your organization. And now that you can see the process, you have one of the most foundational artifacts that'll be needed for innovation. Almost every innovation methodology depends on a basic process map. Now, once the process is documented, we look to add performance metrics to key steps in the process map. Monitoring these metrics will help your operators to control and better manage your business processes. And once you have a process map and once you have the key performance metrics, you now have a really solid foundation for innovating your processes. Putting a process through even a basic methodology that includes simple analysis and identifying and executing on low-hanging fruits, and then also scheduling a review of the process. If you just do those 3 basic things, then you'll be operating at a level 5 of process maturity, where only about 2% of organizations maintain their processes. You'll be way ahead of your competition, and you'll be an outperformer in your industry. So why doesn't every organization document processes, define their performance metrics, and conduct some of this basic innovation activity on their processes? I think it's historically because setting up improvement programs are very time consuming and they're very expensive. Most companies, the way that they'll approach this effort is by standing up a continuous improvement program. And this generally involves a pretty significant upfront cost investment and includes a lot of prep work in identifying different opportunities for improvement. It usually involves selecting people who can drive those improvements, training people as well as leadership on relatively complex continuous improvement methodologies, and then also regular mentoring from a consultant or a coach throughout the time frame, usually anywhere from 1 month to even a year that the project may be conducted. And by the way, that the average continuous improvement manager alone is around $127,000 a year. And of course, there are all of those other soft costs of people taking time away from their work for training and that such. And for all this effort, so often what we're seeing is the same solutions and low-hanging fruit being identified and implemented that would have just as easily been found with a more basic set of process analysis tools. So I've worked with leaders in the continuous improvement industry to determine a better approach for accelerating business process maturity, and then also initiating a continuous improvement program in a more cost-effective way. This model I'm presenting today is specifically designed for small and mid-sized businesses who need to quickly mature processes in order to scale your organization, drive hyper-innovation, and in many cases, show the level of process maturity that's required to track maybe a certain type of client or a certain type of a partner. Or we even see that, especially in the startup world, some investors, before they're willing to invest in additional rounds of funding, are requesting to see improve out certain levels of process maturity. So what we've come up with is the Business Process Maturity Accelerator. It's important to note that this is not something new, not claiming that we've come up with something new here at all. What we have done is we've taken the most important process management and analysis tools, and we've streamlined already effective methodologies to create an extremely light, yet a highly effective approach for taking any process from really any level to level 5. And the focus has been on trying to do this in about 5 hours worth of work. So if you think about it, 1 hour a day for 5 days a week, and you can have a process operating at a level 5 maturity. So some of the ways that the Business Process Accelerator compares with traditional CI approaches is that the BPM Accelerator, first of all, it's going to have a very low upfront cost. Like I said, CI programs, they spend a lot of time with leaders to figure out with the business what problems, what business problems, what process problems that the program will solve for. But from what I've kind of found and experienced more times than not, leaders know that they have problems, but they just don't know what they are. And the BPM Accelerator, it doesn't require the pre-work of identifying problems up front to be successful. But I will say a part of the documenting and the analyzing of processes that you'll see in the BPM Accelerator, this is a part of our approach which is going to yield problem statements and opportunity identification that can be used in future CI endeavors. And then this methodology is about the low-hanging fruit that we do identify. We'll document it, we'll fix it, and then, like I said, the rest of the problems that we identify that might not be conducive for this approach, we'll document those and we'll put them on a continuous improvement pipeline backlog. And finally, because the BPM Accelerator approach is focused solely on increasing the process maturity level, we can be very straightforward in communicating the results of our effort. How many processes, for example, have we matured to level 5? Because of the level of investment involved in a traditional CI program, it puts a lot of emphasis and resources to driving and calculating bottom line results. And this is not to say that the BPM Accelerator doesn't track benefits. We absolutely do. But just remember, the primary goal of the accelerator is to enable our processes to be ready for further continuous improvement initiatives. We document the quick benefits that we gain from re-engineering processes around the low-hanging fruit. And we also track the business case for larger opportunities identified that will begin driving that hyper innovation in the following rounds of continuous improvement. So after much thought and discussion with several of my peers as to what the most important components of business process maturity and enabling business process innovation, what these were, these 6 steps are really what it boiled down to. And again, I just want to reinforce, because I know there'll be people out there that might question or roll their eyes a little bit again at this. Keep in mind that this is not a new method, and it's not an end-all method to innovation. In fact, the way I'd rather you think about this is that this is the starting point of innovation. This is a basic, streamlined approach to initiate kind of a flywheel of continuous improvement and hyper innovation in an organization. So let's take a look at how these 6 steps kind of work together to jumpstart an organization's innovation journey. So as with starting any innovation journey, we have to make sure that the processes that we're going to focus on maturing are aligned with your organization's strategy over both the short and the long term. So one organization may have a short-term strategy focused on back office efficiencies, while another organization may say that they don't have any of their marketing processes documented, and that might be a risk in terms of business continuity. And so that might be where their area of focus will be for the coming year. So the first step is to understand the strategy and align our efforts appropriately. If you don't have a strategy, our team would love to sit with you and create one. The example that you see here is what we call a Hoshin-Connery X matrix, which is a very straightforward way of aligning long-term objectives with some of your short-term activities. Highly recommend it, and we can develop one of these for you if you're not yet to the point where you have a straightforward strategy. Now, once we understand the strategies in the area of focus, we need to prioritize the processes in the order that we're going to send them through our Maturity Accelerator. The basic prioritization algorithm is usually based on the benefits that can be achieved by maturing a process, and then also taking into account the amount of risk that can be mitigated. And then also want to take into account the level of effort that's going to be required to mature a process to level 5. But we can easily adopt a prioritization pipeline to fit other needs of an organization. Additionally, the pipeline tool is going to be used to track processes through the Maturity Accelerator and also beyond, because the processes, they'll need to be revisited on a regular scheduled cadence in order to maintain that level 5 status. We'll talk more a little bit about that at the end. So once we know the priority of the processes to send through the accelerator, this is where we start the work of mapping the highest priority process. So we will create at least 2 process maps for every process. The first is going to be a high-level process map. What we're talking about here is this is the 3 to 6 process steps that even people who know nothing about your process, they should be able to follow and to understand. Ideally, you can explain any process at a high level in 3 to 6 steps. So that's where we'll start. Once we construct that high-level process map, we'll also create a detailed process map of the actual activities that must be conducted for that process to be executed successfully. A good rule of thumb for how to scope process selection is we're really looking to document processes that will end up having anywhere between kind of 9 to up to 36 detailed process steps. Now, I know that there are some processes that have significantly more steps, and what we would do is we would look for opportunities to scope those processes down to within kind of the 9 to 36 step guidance, if possible. The reason why this is important is because this has proven time and time again to be the ideal process length for successfully re-engineering and then also executing on process innovations quickly. So for example, robotic process automation developers, they can automate processes of this size between 9 steps and 36 steps very quickly and very easily. But once you kind of get past that 36-step mark, complexity starts to take over, and the development process and the innovation process becomes a little bit harder. In addition to creating process maps, we'll also work with your operators to video record processes if possible. This significantly streamlines our ability to create process maps without taking up too much time from the operators. Additionally, where possible, we have task capture tools that are free of charge that can capture computer-based tasks on a click-by-click basis, which will make a lot of your future automation opportunities for especially robotic process automation very quick and easy to implement. And by the way, all of these artifacts at the very end are packaged and are available to your organization, not just for driving innovation, but we've also found that these artifacts are extremely helpful in quickly onboarding new employees whenever you have to bring someone on. So after we map the process, we'll identify some key performance metrics that are important to the successful execution of the process. One of the best tools to document and manage important metrics for a process as a control plan I know many of you out there familiar with Lean and Six Sigma are probably very familiar with this tool. For those that are not familiar, a control plan, it documents the specification and performance metrics that are specific to key steps of a process. It also documents controls that we have in a process that help to make sure that the process stays on track, and also provides a response plan if metrics do go off track. So this document is perfect for satisfying those level 4 requirements of business process maturity, of having metrics and then also actively managing the process. The next thing that we do is we'll conduct what we call a waste walk on our process. This is pretty basic, but it's a very powerful tool for identifying problems and opportunities for improvement in our processes. So this includes the low-hanging fruit that we'll solve for as a part of our BPM Accelerator approach, and we'll talk more about the low-hanging fruit and solving for that on the next slide. But for a waste walk, there's really 8 types of waste that we'll analyze, and we'll actually analyze it for each of the process steps that we document. What we're looking for here are defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, transportation waste, excess inventory, motion waste, and excess processing. Again, if you're a Lean or a Six Sigma practitioner, following the downtime acronym for a waste walk. So that's what we follow here. And we will document each example of waste. It doesn't really matter how big or small. We want to make sure that we document it. We want to capture it all. And then also identify any low-hanging fruit that we'd be interested in solving for immediately. So once we've conducted our waste walk, we really have all of the process artifacts that we need to conduct a first round of improvements on the process. So what we'll try to do is immediately re-engineer the process around the eliminate or around any low-hanging fruit that we find. Usually it's related to obvious waste that we found in the process that we can re-engineer the process and engineer that waste out. By low-hanging fruit, also what we're talking about here are things that have benefit, but that are very, very easy to implement. Again, keep in mind, we talk about the number of hours that we're talking about applying to each one of these processes, kind of on the first continuous improvement cycle through the accelerator. We're not talking about a lot of hours, right? We're talking about 5 total. So we're looking at really low-hanging, really easy to implement opportunities that we find. We do expect, actually, and from my experience, almost every process will have some form of low-hanging fruit that we can solve for. And so we will definitely, going back to the conversation around benefits tracking, we definitely will start tracking the benefits on those process opportunities as soon as they come up. Now, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that will be identified that we're not going to have a business case to implement immediately, but we're going to need to track those business cases as well so that we can execute on those innovation opportunities when we do have a positive business case. For example, automation opportunities, that's a prime example of what we're talking about here. If we find 2 hours worth of potential automation savings in a process per week, well, that's probably not going to be enough to justify a robotic process automation solution. But you multiply that times 10 processes that we send through the Maturity Accelerator, and all of a sudden we're likely in the ballpark of talking about a business case for automation. And so, it's not just robotic process automation. We can also track business cases for other types of automation as well. Intelligent process automation and conversational AI are also very popular solutions that can be addressed out of some of our waste walks and some of the other opportunities that we'll identify as we continue along the CI continuous improvement journey. So it's very important to point out, we're going to first look to re-engineer a process. And secondly, we're going to look to automate, which is a little bit different than what you might hear from some of the other bigger automation companies out there who are mostly selling automation. And they'll tell you, hey, we're automate first, we're automate first. But if we can get value, if we can bring efficiency out of the process just by doing simple re-engineering, my approach is re-engineer the process first. Once we re-engineer as much as we can out of the process, secondly, what's left for automation? If we can't re-engineer, if we can't automate, the next thing that we're going to look to do is, are there going to be opportunities for augmentation, for augmenting the process? So we have some really great resources with expertise, for example, in back office finance and accounting, legal, medical, digital marketing, that can help lower the cost or also kind of bridge the gap of business continuity if some of that comes out in the waste walks that we do. And then finally, as mentioned on the previous slide, there's going to be opportunities for process engineering that are identified during the waste walk that will best be solved by using a more complex problem-solving methodology. For example, like Six Sigma's DMAIC methodology, or maybe the DMADB methodology. What we do is we'll document those opportunities as problem statements, and then we'll also work to track their business case and prioritization as well to be completed at a later time. So at the end of this step, what we'll do is we'll ensure that the business has all of the documentation, all of the artifacts, and then also schedule the process for its next process review. Normally, what that looks like is a review that's scheduled for about a year from now. This will, though, be dependent upon kind of where your business is at in terms of how quickly it's innovating. That it might be a shorter amount of time, right? We might need to examine processes every 6 months instead of a year, but a year is generally a good rule of thumb that we start with and we default to as we do this type of work. And then once we do that, document it all, we archive it, and then we move on to the next highest priority process, and then just repeat this cycle over and over again. And I included this slide. What it's meant to reinforce is that this Business Process Maturity Accelerator, again, it's not the end of the innovation journey, but it's actually can be thought of as the initiator, the enabler, the beginning, right, of a broader hyper innovation journey that really feeds innovation through more complex CI projects, through opportunities for automation, and then opportunities as well for augmentation as well. So at a high level, that is the Business Process Maturity Accelerator.
Great. Hey, thanks for that overview, Jake. If anybody has any questions, we probably should have said this in the beginning, please feel free to put them in the chat. I did have one that I wanted to start off with, Jake. And again, thank you for your presentation. I thought it was a lot of good info. And I really like how it's a simple process up front that can kind of enable all those different methodologies, in the back end that you mentioned. I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to this presentation. But so there's a lot of good info. I guess the question I have is, like, how do people get started? Like, can they do this on their own? If they wanted help, what would they do? But like, what's the best first step or options for first steps that people could take?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll answer that in two ways. So first of all, there is obviously, this is a very simple kind of method. There is a do-it-yourself option, right, for this. For those who are not familiar, Valenta has what we call Valenta Growth Lab, where we actually are put courses and actually teach some of what we do. And I'll be putting together about a 7 or 8 hour course on the business process maturity model that we'll be looking to launch probably in the next month or so. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely encourage you to go to valentagrowthlabs.com. Go ahead and sign up for our VIP list so that we can make sure that you stay updated on when that comes out. But what I'll be going through is each of these steps of the process in more detail. We'll have a class on, for example, process mapping. We'll have a class on how to do metrics and how to do a waste walk and how to document business cases and the such. So we'll have a training for that piece, and that will enable your organization to do this more in terms of a do-it-yourself approach. We also have a do-it-with-me model as well that we could help you out with. And what that would look like is, if you wanted to bring Valenta in, we could set this model up for you, maybe walk through a couple of iterations of the cycle and to train your people on it, kind of a train the trainer approach, make sure that you guys are comfortable with it. And this is definitely a methodology that you could then kind of take off with and run on your own if you have the resources and to support that. I know a lot of you, your organizations might be small or mid-size, and you don't have the resources. You're not at a point yet where you can support or run a full-blown, full-time innovation team. So one of the things that we're looking at doing as well is creating a subscription model for managing this process for you. What that subscription model is going to look like. If you guys know Valenta, you know that we try to keep our subscription models low cost because we're really focused on affordability, right? For the small and the mid-sized business, that's where our passion is. That's where our niche is. That's who we want to make sure has access to this. So a low-cost subscription model. I would say it's going to follow all of the what Valenta does best in their contracting in terms of, like, it'll be month to month. It'll be no commitment contract as well. And hopefully what this is meant to do, right, is jumpstart an innovation program that will deliver ROI and will deliver larger and larger opportunities to scale, to expand, to hopefully save money or to grow your business, grow your marketing revenue, or whatever the process is that we're working on accelerating for you and bringing that to a level 5 maturity model. You'll be able to have access to that and resources that can facilitate that for you from Valenta based on that subscription model.
Thanks for that answer. Had to unmute myself. Hey, I don't see any other new questions, so I think we can call it a wrap. Jake, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate that overview. A lot of good information. And again, anybody has any questions, there's Jake's email. Feel free to reach out. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.